What's up guys, my name is Carlos Cortesi, CEO of Cortesi Productions, and on this video we will cover 5 reasons why the Canon C70 might not be for you. This camera has been my main tool at work for the past 2 years and has contributed immensely to my business's success. I still think it's a great option for solo operators in the market, regardless of the price point. Make sure to check out my previous videos for some awesome use tips. However, it does have some limitations that might be deal breakers for you. So, let's go over them. First is the lack of professional photography. Technically, it does take JPEG pictures, but these are made for scene references only, not professional work. But the C70 is a cinema camera. It's not supposed to take photos. So, if you need a do-it-all workhorse camera that takes both raw photos and pro video, maybe look into the R5C, because the C70 just won't cut it. Up next is the Super 35mm sensor, or lack of full-frame sensor. But before we continue, I want to clarify something. You don't need a full-frame camera to be a professional. I own a commercial videography company and have been filming for nearly 5 years on hundreds of paid projects and have never owned a full-frame camera. However, I must admit the C70's crop sensor does have some limitations. First is the crop factor of the RF lenses. This 1.5 crop limits the most practical focal lengths into awkward ranges that I find myself working around. Canon did release their more affordable RFS line, but they don't have the specs or quality of their premium glass. In order to avoid this issue, I've been using the 0.71x adapter, which nearly cancels out the 1.5 crop for EF lenses. And it's worked pretty well. However, the adapter has limited autofocus lens compatibility, and you'll be limited to the older EF glass. The second issue with the Super 35 sensor is the poor low-light performance, at least in comparison to other options on the market. When filming RAW, I don't go over 640 ISO due to noise, because it takes forever to export after removing it with Neat Video in Premiere Pro. When filming XFAVC and C-Log2, I can bump it all the way up to 1250 without getting noise. So ideally not the best candidate for low light situations. However, these ISO values seem small compared to Canon's full frame counterparts and laughable when stacked up against Sony's low light performance. Even though I mostly film well lit corporate videos, I have found myself limited in a few low light scenarios, especially after seeing my friend's FX3 footage at 12,800 ISO. So if you don't want to deal with the 1.5 crop, the compromises of the 0.71x adapter, or poor low light performance, the C70 might not be for you. Number 3 is the lack of an SDI port. In my eyes, the C70 was almost a proper cinema camera. One of the missing features was the SDI port. SDI is a more robust, reliable, and professional connection than HDMI. And even though the C70 has a full-size HDMI port, you will be limited by a few factors, including the reliability of the connection, length of the cable, and the transmission speed. Keep in mind that most cinema cameras have both SDI and HDMI, and some, like the Redvi Raptor, even have 3 different SDI ports. These are awesome because they allow you to send multiple wireless feeds to directors, focus pullers, and other personnel on set. Lastly, if you're doing professional live streaming or large events, an SDI connection is the way that I would go. So, if this is your intended use, the C70 might not be for you. Up next is the slow and expensive SD cards. In order to get the most out of the C70, you need V90 SD cards. These allow you to record up to 4K 12-bit RAW at 60 frames per second. However, they are expensive, costing about $1 to $1.25 per gigabyte. Compare that to the CF Express Type B cards found on the C200, 300, and 500 cameras, and you'll see that they are less than 60 cents per gigabyte and considerably faster. So, with the V90 SD cards, you are paying nearly twice the price for a fraction of the speed. And lastly, reason number 5 is the lack of modularity, at least in comparison to its other cinema counterparts. Unlike the C300 Mark III and C500 Mark II, the C70 is severely limited for custom configurations. The inability to remove the flip screen, its lack of full-size XLR inputs, its awkward bottom threading system, the side strap which you need to remove for gimbal use and it takes forever to reinstall, its lack of support for an expansion unit, and its general roided-up DSLR form factor makes it difficult to configure for larger productions. You can still make it work, but it won't be as easy to set up as using traditional box-style cinema options. So, if you're mainly working with big crews and production sets, I would probably skip the C70 as my primary camera. Again, the C70 is amazing and is still the best option for my needs. However, because it's so good in some things yet lacks so much in others, it does put Canon users in a tough spot. We essentially have 4 choices for modern cinema cameras: the R5C, the C70, the C300 Mark III, and the C500 Mark II. The R5C has no C-Log2 outside of RAW, no internal NDs, terrible video ergonomics, even worse battery life, no XLR inputs, and its small size doesn't inspire client confidence. So those are deal breakers for me. The C70 is my current workhorse, but still suffers from the limitations we just covered. The C300 Mark III uses the same sensor as the C70, yet you're paying nearly twice as much. It does feature an SDI port, full-size XLR inputs, compatibility with Canon's expansion unit, great video ergonomics, and fast CF Express cards. However, it's a Super 35mm EF mount, so you can't use the EF 0.71x adapter, which means there is no escaping the 1.5 crop. And RF lenses aren't even an option. And finally, the C500 Mark II is a full-frame camera and works great with EF glass. However, since it's the oldest of the four, it lacks the direct touch control menu, 4K at 120 frames per second at 10-bit, and does not have the 16-stop DGO sensor from the C70 and the C300 Mark III, which has saved me countless times. But luckily for Canon, I have found a solution for this dilemma. What we need is a C500 Mark II body with a full-frame DGO 8K RF sensor. It should also record an 8K 12-bit RAW up to 60 frames per second and XFABC 10-bit both intra and long GOP in C-Log 2 at 8K, 6K, 4K, 2K, and 1080p, all up to 120 frames per second. Put the direct touch control menu from the C70 and internal GPS track on the camera, a beefy removable monitor, dual CF Express Type-B slots, and an SD card slot for proxies, install an RF, EF, and PL mounts, 2 SDI outputs plus a full-size HDMI port, expand the raw controllers to look more like Reds, throw in 2 chunky batteries, price it between $15,000 and $20,000, and you have a winner. Or at least, I'll buy it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video helped you decide whether the Canon C70 is or isn't right for you. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on the comments below. And if you want to see more awesome videography content, make sure to subscribe. Peace.